HarperCollins presents An Orphan's Courage by Cathy Sharp. Read by Antonia Beamish. Chapter 1.
"Want some pocket money?"
the drunken voice asked, and a large hand waved a £1 note at Jinny Hollis enticingly. He leered at her in a way that sent chills down Jinny's spine, and she shook her head as he rose to his feet and stumbled across her mother's kitchen towards her.
"Come on, it isn't hard to be nice to me, is it?"
Jinny drew back, feeling the vomit rise in her throat as she saw the lascivious gleam in his eyes. She kept her gaze fixed on the face of the latest of her mother's punters, backing away, moving towards the door and freedom. He was good-looking in a dark, brutish way, with black hair slicked back with hair oil and unshaven chin. Jake wasn't the first to offer her money in order to be allowed to fumble beneath her skirts, and his approach was the same as that of all the others. When her mother was in the room, they played the nice uncle, but as soon as Jinny was alone with them, they tried to molest her. Some offered enticements, money, small gifts and food, but others just made a grab for her. She'd been forced to endure rough hands up her skirt and under her blouse more times than she cared to remember, and once one of them had got her down and tried to force himself on her. Her screams had brought Nellie from next door running in at the kitchen door, and her irate neighbour had batted the unfortunate uncle with her rolling pin until he swore at her, got to his feet, and bolted. Jinny would have screamed for Nellie now, but she knew it would be useless. Her friend had gone shopping down the market and wouldn't be back for ages. Jinny's back was against the door now. She wrenched at it, pulled it open, and tried to escape into the backyard, but Jake lunged at her, pinning her against the doorpost so that she could feel its sharp edges cutting into her flesh.
"Got you at last,"
he muttered, as he pressed his slack, wet mouth against hers, and the stink of his breath made the gorge rise in her throat. In desperation, she brought her knee up and went for his groin with every ounce of her strength. He gave a yell of shock mixed with pain and staggered back, his eyes filled with a vicious rage that terrified her. Yet her action had saved her, because, as he drew back, stunned and winded, she made her escape into the yard and ran for her life. Tears stung Jinny's eyes as she ran, her chest heaving. She fought for breath and against the storm of emotion overtaking her now that she was, for the moment, out of danger. Forced at last to stop running because her chest hurt and she couldn't go any further, Jinny leaned against the wall of a derelict factory and closed her eyes, letting the tears flow. Why did everything have to be so horrible at home? Jinny's mother was almost always drunk when she came back from the pub where she worked behind the bar until late at night. There was usually a man in tow, sometimes known to Jinny, and at other times a complete stranger. Mabel Hollis just didn't seem to be able to manage without a man about the place, even though several of them had treated her badly. Some of them beat her, and she often had black eyes when she finally got up in the morning. Others simply sponged off her, expecting her to provide food and lodgings, as well as the other comforts Mabel offered. Quite a few considered that Jinny should be a part of the bargain, and she'd been fighting them off since she was 12, and was always in trouble at school for turning up late, because if she didn't do a few chores in the house, no one did, and the safest time to do them was in the morning before Jake and her mother got out of bed. Jinny's mother seemed to have money for drink and for having her hair bleached and set in the deep waves that men seemed to find so sensual, but she seldom remembered to go shopping for food, and often ended up shoving a few pennies in Jinny's hand and telling her to get some chips. Mabel dressed and behaved like a tart, and Jinny was ashamed of her. Now that she was coming up to her 15th birthday and preparing to leave school, Jinny thought desperately of getting away somewhere. Anywhere she could live by herself or with friends, away from her mother's
Sample complete. Ready to continue?